Good evening and thank you for joining us on Sunday Interview. I'm your host, Grevazio Zulu. Now, government has unveiled a 64.5 billion kwacha national budget for 2017 with cross-cutting measures aimed at putting the economy back on track. Tough decisions have been placed on the table, with Minister of Finance Felix Mutati warning that government will not spend what it does not have, neither will it borrow beyond its ability to pay. Various other incentives have been announced to spur growth in sectors such as agriculture, while funds have been set aside to dismantle the huge debt owed to contractors and suppliers. The question is, are these measures enough to restore growth and development? Well, Mr. Mutati is on the program tonight to try and explain some of these issues and incentives contained in the 2017 budget and what they aim to achieve, of course. Minister, I'm grateful that you came.
Thank you for having me.
It must be a very busy and hectic time for you.
I think it has always been very busy and hectic. You know, the whole process of preparing the budget took quite a lot of energy and investment. The consultation process, both within government and with other stakeholders, was very engaging. So what you are seeing now is the output of what has been a very intensive preparatory period, both at levels of consultation and at the physical level of preparation of the budget.
You were presenting the budget for the first time to Parliament. How did it feel carrying all these hopes and expectations from over 13 million Zambians and, of course, even external stakeholders and interest parties?
Obviously, the burden and the weight of expectation were very heavy. But what made that burden a little lighter was that we consulted extensively, listening to the various groups, listening to trade unions, civil society, the business community, the bankers, the mining sector, and the ordinary people, that this is a situation we are in as a country. We need to recover. If you are in our position as government, what are the things that we think must be included in the 2017 budget? So we had various inputs from across the country, and that gave us hope that we are in this together.
Of course, you presented the budget on Friday. We've got mixed feelings and opinions, and of course reactions are varied. Others are calling it a recovery budget. What are you really promising the people, in a nutshell, if you're going to summarize the budget and say, what are you promising Zambians?
I think we said we want to move and recover the economy, and we have got to take the steps that are critically necessary to recover the economy. And what are these steps that we're going to do as a government? In yesterday's presentation, we have said the recovery program is going to be based on 5 pillars. And the first pillar of recovery was, how do we begin to mobilize domestic revenue? How would we boost domestic revenue? There are things that were put in there around domestic revenue recovery, including new initiatives, such as creating trade zone around the borders, Kasumbalesa, Chirundi, and Kipushi, to enhance collection, such as levying vehicles that are coming in and out of the country at borders, because our friends are doing it, such as creating toll gates to be able to accumulate revenue, such as creating information technology and a single window platform at borders that will help us in boosting revenue. And we have also said, under the same pillar, we are going to refocus government expenditure. We are going to refocus government expenditure to ensure that that expenditure is directed to where we can receive maximum output. And you see right through the budget that, for example, in infrastructure, we have put particular emphasis on those roads that are going to assist us with our ambition to export commodities outside Zambia. And that is the reason we are doing and accelerating the Solwezi Chingora Road. And that is the reason we have said we are going to pay critical attention to the Kitwe Chingora Road. And that is the reason I've said we are going to do PPPs to be able to do the dual carriage road from Lusaka to Ndola. So our investment is going to be geared One, to smoothen trade and to make sure that these development corridors, the trade corridors, are attended to, including the road network that leads us out through Nakonde. So we are saying we are refocusing, and that is the first pillar. So on one hand is dealing with revenue, on the other hand is refocusing expenditure so that it assists us not only to stabilize the economy, but also for growth. On the second pillar, we indicated that the measures that are going to be placed under the economic recovery program, some of them are going to be impactful on society, in particular the vulnerable. As we remove subsidies on fuel, as we migrate to cost-reflective tariff, we must be able to put mechanisms that are going to protect the poor people. That is why in this budget, we have allocated a total of 2.3 billion in Okwacha to address issues around social protection.
Which includes pensions and social cash transfer.
Which includes pensions and social cash transfer. Because unless you begin to create capacity for our people that are on pension, give them the money so that they can begin to do the things that they want to do. I think it's critically important. Social cash transfer, the most vulnerable, give them a little bit of money. And that's why we have, in addition, said in agriculture, we are going to migrate from the food fertilizer input support program to the e-voucher system so that we better target the recipient, but we also minimize the wastage that has been associated with FISIP. So all these things are actually in just one pillar of the things that we do in order to recover.
Stabilize the economy.
Yes.
Now, I want to take you back to where you talk about infrastructure. Others will argue that you've focused, in this case, you're increasing, for instance, toll fees and not toll sites, which should be the case.
In fact, if
we're looking at issues, and I would give you an example of the Mansa-Luwingu road, which is a new road, heavy trucks on that road, no toll gate.
What we said very clearly in the budget is a two-pronged strategy. One, to lift upwards the toll fees from 10 kwacha to 20 kwacha. Not too much. Number two, in percentage terms, but in absolute terms, it's very little. If you look at what has happened to our road infrastructure, because of lack of maintenance, we are redoing the roads at great expense. So we need to have a program where continuously you are maintaining the road so that you can extend the life of that road. And therefore, your reinvestment in the road is done much later than doing it repetitively, continuously. We said in the budget that we're going to increase the toll booths. By the end of December this year, an additional 4 will be done at Katuba, in Mumbwa, and a few other places. Our target is that in 2017, we must have at least 20 toll booths. So that strategy for toll booths is actually there as part of creating this revenue that is going to address the maintenance of the road infrastructure, which is critically important. So it's a dual strategy. One, on the race. Two, increasing the number of toll booths.
Now, when we look at the general aspect of the budget, one is going to describe it that you're basically telling people to fasten their belts for a rough takeoff. Is that exactly the picture? 2017 is going to be a rough year for people?
What we're telling the people is a clear message. And the clear message is that you cannot spend money you don't have. Very clear. And we can't borrow beyond our ability to repay. And last night when I was at Zika, a congregation, I learned a new phrase from there. It said basically when you're in a hole, the last thing that you want is to dig, is to come out. So we need to do those things that recover the economy. As part of the recovery program, we have already said, is that we need to enhance control of expenditure. The things we can't afford. And when we say you can't spend money you don't have, for example, the removal of subsidy answers to the issue of spending money we don't have. This year alone, under electricity and fuel, we are going to spend close to 1 billion, money we actually don't have. So what that means is that we are removing that quantum of money to deal with other economic and social investment to put into consumption, because when you buy and subsidize fuel, you are actually burning it, in the air. So let's not spend money, we don't have. It's not even tightening the belts. It's basically directing the limited resource that we're able to generate in this economy.
So when I talk about tightening the belts, I'm looking at what exactly the picture is looking for an ordinary person out there, probably even for a middle class person. What we're talking about is fuel prices are up, electricity tariffs are going to go up, toffees are up, talk time is going to go up, spare parts are going up, everything is going up. That doesn't look like a smooth picture. It doesn't look rosy at all.
It's not even about being rosy, being smooth, being what. It's that we are taking a realistic dispatch in the management of the economic affairs. So fuel price is not necessarily going up, but getting it to market level, because we were putting too much subsidy in that. We're spending money we didn't have. We have said very clearly, we are going to migrate to cost-reflecting tariff, because we can't continue to spend money that we don't have. So there's nothing tightening. It's just getting back to the platform of realism. And we're also conscious that the revenue base that we've got in the country is not as big as it is. Even if we expand it to informal sector, it's still, the economy is very, very small. So we need to generate revenue in order to address the many challenges that we've got. In order to deal, for example, with those of the poor in the rural areas, how do we address the issues of feeder roads? How do we address the issues of the clinics, the schools, the staffing in the rural areas, unless we're able to collect money from somewhere? So it's basically saying, where can we find money in order to deal with the challenges that the economy actually is facing? So it's sharing the burden. And that is the philosophy. When
you deliver this simple message to us and to the people out there, is this the same message you're putting on the table in cabinet, that we cannot spend what we don't have? We cannot borrow beyond what we can pay back?
In fact,
that's where the problem starts, maybe.
In fact, you'll be pleased to know that, first of all, this budget is a message from the president. And the emphasis of we can't spend what we don't have is a message from the president. So he's telling cabinet, his ministers, that as you plan, as you do your activities in the various ministries, in the economy, you must be ingrained with the fact that don't spend what is not there. So you see that most of the expenditure lines for the ministries and other spending agencies, if not 80%, they have remained at the same level as in 2016. So we are not increasing government recurrent expenditure. What we're trying to increase is investment expenditure. What we're trying to increase is social protection of the poor. That is where the money is going. What we're also doing is looking at the portfolio of infrastructure, particularly in the road sector, and saying to ourselves, we need to prioritize, we need to resequence, we need to be able to say this road is important for development, but at the moment it's not crucial because we don't have sufficient money to be able to do. So you contractor, slow down or pack your things. Demobilize because we can't afford. We can't afford.
So that's going to be a true picture for 2017.
It's going to be
restricted procurement of major equipment and projects. That's a freeze, of course. Is that a freeze on projects, new projects?
What we have said is that we have so much of ongoing projects across the country. Where is the logic that you can't even manage what you already have and you want to go and start new things? If you're building a house you are not able to finish, are you going to go to another plot and start building another house? I think logic tells you that finish what you started before you do the next thing. So we are saying for new projects, unless the economic merits and they're going to terminate in boosting the capacity of revenue generation, then we're going to do it. But if it's not going to have those features, then hold on maybe until 2018, 2019, or whenever. So that is going to be a feature for 2017. That we have agreed as cabinet, as a people, that is the way we need to go.
The people are really expecting to hear from you talk about discipline, transparency, and accountability, particularly on the side of government. No, I guess you've spoken about this, but maybe you're being too diplomatic when you speak about restoring fiscal fitness, when you talk about rebalancing fiscal and the economy. These are probably polite words. You probably should be talking, we are going to be disciplined as government. We're going to be accountable. We're going to be transparent.
Those are not just words. What we are doing, Grevazio, is that attacking the areas where we have got major challenges. And in government, the biggest area is procurement. Most of the leakages are in the procurement side. So we have said and are going to do for 2017, we are going to benchmark all items that are procured by government, from stationery to road contracts, so that we have a common price. So if you're in the Ministry of Education, the price you're going to pay for a rim should be the same as in the Ministry of Health, the same as in the Ministry of Finance. Remove the variation, because that's where the indiscipline and favors begin to get through. If you're doing a road, it doesn't matter which contractor, whether it's Chinese, European, or whatever, the price per kilometer must be the same. So those are the beginnings of discipline, because you have to have systems in order to get discipline. In financial management, we're going to ensure that the IFMIS is rolled out to all the ministries, so that you can't spend any money other than that which is in the budget. So the system itself will reject. That's part of enforcing discipline. We have also said in this budget that we're going to amend the Public Finance Act, so that we give it a bit more teeth, that all those that spend money that has not been budgeted for are disciplined.
I was going to ask you about that. What exactly are you targeting? What are you looking at? Because the biggest challenge has been the hemorrhage, like you've spoken about, the leakage. It's too high. Every year, government apportions money for expenditure, for public goods, public service. But when the Auditor General's report comes out, it makes everyone wonder whether there's a system in place at all.
You know, the Auditor General reports make very sad reading, because a big portion of government resource has gone into wastage.
People's pockets.
In people's pockets. And one of the reasons is the whole discipline infrastructure in government takes a little long. You report, it goes to another, it goes to a commission, it goes to whatever.
Has it collapsed, probably?
It hasn't collapsed. What
does it exist?
What hasn't happened is that the legal framework that is supposed to enforce discipline has remained not updated. For example, the Public Finance Act, it's of 2004. The conditions then were totally different to the conditions now. So we need to begin to put teeth, so that, for example, when the Auditor General is presenting the report and saying these are the abuses, they must be in the committee meeting at Parliament where the civil servants are being called to explain. There must be somebody seated in that committee from Zambia Police, from anti-corruption, from drug enforcement, so that the cases are taken on the spot. And when we begin to do those active things, it will be self-controlling. But now everybody knows that the Auditor General will compile the report, they'll read it, and government will say we are taking actions on this and that. So now we need to amend the legal framework. Our friends in Uganda, you know what they do? In Tanzania, when the Auditor General is presenting the report at the committee, the Public Accounts Committee of Parliament, in that audience is the various enforcement wings.
Law enforcement agencies are sitting in there.
Yes, they are sitting in there. So if you fluff in your explanation, you are immediately taken. So you are not taken to be disciplined in an administrative way where, you know, it goes to a permanent secretary and all those kind of, it's immediately taken to enforcement. So we also must move directly to enforcement, and that is where, you know, things are lacking. So it's the enforcement part that is critically, you know, important. So when we talk about transparency, when we talk about accountability, is that there must be a framework of enforcement that will act, first of all, to minimize the leakage and eliminate the leakage, but much more also to act as a deterrence for those that are contemplating to do these silly things. And typical things, for example, in the Auditor General's report, you have situations where clearly money has been misappropriated and the Auditor General has said so. When somebody on the street takes money from you, immediately you can report him to the police and is arrested. And things.
Yeah, we paid ghost workers, we paid people that paid double salaries, paid people that people have paid themselves sometimes.
Yeah. So it's the protocol of dealing with cases within government that must change. So we also must get to a level where you misappropriate. You are not transferred from Department 1 to Department 2. But
you are transferred from Department 1 to the police cells.
Yes, absolutely. That way, they are creating the teeth that are necessary to be able to bite. Grevazio, if you don't do that, it doesn't matter how many ways and procedures and regulations that you put in place.
Nothing will work. It doesn't matter how beautiful the budget. Nothing will work.
Nothing will work.
Now, I wanted to take you back to the budget again and look at your projections and objectives. And I've seen that you probably the most cautious minister in so many years, maybe if I should say. Are you being cautious or probably just now telling us how gloomy the economic picture is? In a long time, probably in 20 years, we've not had such a low projection of GDP growth of 3.4. That's the lowest in a long, long time.
Grevazio, if you look back the last 2-3 years, the targets that we have set ourselves in terms of achieving, we have not met. And this year we said our target was for us to be able to achieve GDP of around 5%. We are going to end up at 3%, 2016. And before that, we had a target of 7%. And we ended up below 4%. So it means that realism and conservatism must come into place. And look analytically, how can you be able to achieve the things that you want to achieve? So we're saying that as part of the recovery, let's be conscious. Let's put in the systems that help us in expanding revenue generation. Let's put in the systems that minimize revenue leakages. Once you have that solid foundation, then you can begin to lift.
And you can aim high.
You can aim high.
But of course, when you talk about 3.4%, 4%, 3%, this is very far from what you need to grow as a developing country, as a poor country, as a country that is fighting poverty. You probably need 8 to 9% of growth. So we are very far. Is there any hope?
In the medium-term expenditure framework, we are estimating that 2018-2019, we are going to get back to those positive GDP growths that are above 5%. We need basically to migrate from the 5s to double digits in order to deal with the challenges of poverty. But we're at a level that first you need to stabilize because the economy is shaking. Once you achieve stability, that then creates a platform for you to grow the economy.
Let's look at the other projections. The fiscal deficit is the same. Last year the projection was 3.8%. This year, I mean, but you've gone for 7%. You look at Domestic revenue mobilization, this year it was at 20%, you've gone down to 18. All these speak to the fact that you really don't have so much confidence that anything is going to grow beyond reasonable figures.
No, it's not even so much confidence, you know. Last year you say it was 3.8% in terms of
this year, I mean, deficit. Yes.
Yeah, this year.
2016.
Yeah, 2016, 3.8% deficit. I made it very clear in my statement, you know, in Parliament, that when the year is ended, if you include the arrears that you owe, your deficit is going to end up at 10%, which is very high. So
higher than our target.
Yes. So when I'm saying that we are now going to get to 7%, I'm actually trying to say that we're going to put in measures to reduce it from the 10 to bring it back to 7%. And then you asked about, you know, issues of
resource revenue mobilization.
Resource revenue
from 20 to
18. One of the big features that we had in 2016 is that we said we are going to do the land titling program. And out of that, 5.1 billion was supposed to be revenue that was to come from the program called land titling. And what did we end up getting? 18 million. So we are moving from 5.1 billion to 18 million. So the differential that you are seeing is basically accounted for by this ambition that we had in 2016, that we're going to accumulate 5.1 billion.
So sometimes you go to Parliament, pronounce these nice measures that everyone is happy with and they congratulate you over. There's no backing system. That line titling is an example. This year we failed it.
Yeah.
You're pledging it next year. The system is in place now.
Yeah. What we're doing is that the first program was very ambitious across Zambia. For 2017, we said we're only going to focus on a pilot for Lusaka. Deal with one and learn lessons on how it can be done. If you look at our colleagues, and this is where, you know, as Zambians, we must begin to ask ourselves a question. 5 years ago, Rwanda had 150,000 to 200 title deeds. And we started dealing with land reforms 5 or 6 years ago. We had a slightly higher number of title deeds than Rwanda 5 years ago. They embarked on this land titling program. Today, they have got over 12.5 million titles.
What does it say about our systems? Do we lack seriousness as a country?
What it says are many things. Is that the ambition level is not backed with the passion and determination to be able to deliver, and also with the resource dispatch to be able to deliver. Now we have got a minister of lands who's got the passion, and she has said to us, let me not go countrywide. Give me a narrow space. See how I can be able to perform. And then we can go across the country. So what we're doing is that we're giving her the resource, one. Number two, she has indicated that if we leave it as an exercise of the civil service in the Ministry of Land, the wheels won't turn. So we'll create a special unit which will include some of the private sector colleagues, so that their task every day when they go to the office is dealing with issues around titling.
So we have this huge cadre of civil service that can't move and still get paid and still report for work.
We have a big cadre of civil service. You cannot put on top of the things that they're doing on a day-to-day basis a huge program such as land titling. You can't expect the permanent secretary, the director this, the director that, to be able to pick up this huge program. Sometimes there is merit to hive out certain action and include the private sector and other people to be able to to deliver. I think delivery is what is important. And for us in 2017, particularly in the area of land titling, I think we need to begin to make a difference. Create a small unit. It's going to be help to deliver so that we minimize the shuffling of papers, the wastage, the slowdowns, the committees, the workshops.
The bureaucracy.
Yeah,
just cut it out completely.
Yeah,
let me look at one of your huge targets and policy pronouncements in yesterday's budget, which probably stands out among most of them. Dismantling arrears to suppliers and contractors and immediately prevent the accumulation of new arrears. This is very big, very huge.
Grevazio, what has happened in 2016 is that we owe so much to contractors, to suppliers of goods and services. Because we owe them so much, they have also not been able to pay us the taxes. And that's what, when we say tax revenue is falling, it's because it's locked. So the wheel is not turning. Two, the liquidity in the market is not there to support the contractors to do anything. Credit extension has dried out. So we said we needed to unlock. So who moves first? It must be government. So beginning this week, we are going to make announcements of decisions that we have undertaken to begin to unlock the arrears for suppliers of goods and services and for contractors. So that if we push in liquidity in the economy, not only are we going to collect the taxes, but we are going to inject in economic activities. And this we are determined as a government to do. And this month we are going to deliver the first step of dismantling the arrears, which will continue in December and will continue next year. So we have made a provision in 2017 of 3.3 billion purely directed to dismantling what we owe.
Does this cover the whole date that you owe?
It doesn't cover the whole debt that we owe, but it will significantly reduce what we actually owe in terms of supplies of goods and services. And we have a program that we're going to announce in terms of how we dismantle the arrears. We are going to, for example, to say, we owe you $1 billion. Now, in that $1 billion is cost of delays, interest, overpricing, etc., etc. Can we have a positive conversation between you and us? You want to get paid? Let's clean out some of the items in this whole course. Can you take 900 instead of
3 million?
Yeah. If you say no, we talk the next one. Somebody will take. So we'll give priority to those that will give government some level of discount. And then down the ladder. So this is a specific program to begin to deal with the arrears, because on the other hand, most of the contractors have borrowed money and they're suffering interest. So if we can cut...
They're suffering interest. You want to negotiate the interest now?
Yes, they're suffering interest. So we shall cut the accumulation of interest, isn't it? Because you're going to pay them and say, no, today we pay you. So you are going to save from further interest that is going to come through. You understand? Okay? If we pay them, we are also going to say, can you also pay us the component of tax that has not been paid because you are not paid? So that tax collected will be brought back into the system so that we create further capacity to
pay others.
To pay others.
You are restricting recruitment, new public recruitments, except for frontline staff in health and education. Is this another employment freeze, recruitment freeze? It sounds more like it. Only 2 sectors are getting workers.
Currently, and we have said we're going to be frank with the people of Zambia, is that payroll alone for 2016 is consuming 58.6% of domestic revenue. Now, what is left after that? Is you pay your debts, debt servicing. So very little is left for development expenditure. Now, if the burden of payroll is so high, Grevazio, do you want me to be able to recruit beyond what we can afford? Our focus for 2017 is that we have created infrastructure in health and education. Let's get the personnel to begin to deliver in those health centers, in those little schools. Let's make use of the people that have got in the other ministries and spending agencies to deliver better. And I think the capability to deliver with the stock of people that we've got now is there.
You're not recruiting?
We're not recruiting, except in those two. And we made it very clear in the budget. We are not recruiting. We're only recruiting frontline staff in education.
In two sectors, education
and health.
Now, let me take you to agriculture. It's something you've pointed at as one of the key sectors that you want to move into. But there are issues in that sector that have now become rhetoric, that they're basically in the budget maybe every year. We're looking at diversification. We're looking at realigning the FRA to restrict it to purchase only food reserve needed for the country. But let's look at diversification. And one of the songs that has been there is the rollout of the e-voucher system. And we haven't rolled out since we started talking about it. If we attach that seriousness to a project, couldn't it have been done by now?
Grevazio, maybe let's put it this way, is that we can no longer hide behind words. We need action.
Time is up.
Time is up. And we have had lessons, particularly for the FISIP, that it has not helped us to diversify the economy, because we are providing common inputs and many inputs associated with maize. With the e-voucher system, it gives the freedom to the farmer to choose the crop that he wants to do. So the beginnings of diversification is to give the freedoms to that farmer to do the things that they want to do. And that's why we're saying that we have to migrate from FISIP to e-voucher. And the intention, and we have allocated lots of money, 2.9 billion to e-voucher alone for next year. So the impact of spending that level of resource in e-voucher will be seen on the ground.
So there'll be no excuse.
There'll be absolutely no excuse. And we're doing other things in agriculture. Only 2 weeks ago, the Minister of Agriculture was in Western Province launching $55.4 million infrastructure support for cashew to support over 600,000 people. This is part of your diversification story. We are working, for example, with Zambia breweries on cassava, on sorghum. That is part of the diversification in agriculture. So we are saying that we're going to begin to move to do the practical things in agriculture.
You've also announced one big thing there.
Yeah.
I know that you want to create a fund under the Emergent Farmer Support Program. This is a new program, new project, new fund. How does it work?
Yeah. Before I even come to that, because you have spoken about agriculture, one of the things that we have also realized why diversification in agriculture didn't happen is because of some of the policies that were contained therein.
It's been a song.
Yeah. For example,
someone can
yes,
easily slot it into your speech. Yes, people believe someone just copies from another budget and puts it in another budget and puts it in another budget. We're probably going to see it in 2018 budget, written and read, and maybe no movement.
We are eliminating from 2017 the uncertainty. We have said the issues about banning, not banning, creates uncertainty. And that is what slows down the expansion in agriculture. So we have made it very clear that starting next year, we will no longer pursue a policy around bans. You are free to export. That creates uncertainty. We're removing the rigidities.
You spoke about that long very well behind your mind, that there's a ban in force currently.
Yeah, there's a ban.
Contradicting your policy.
Maybe. No. We're not contradicting. We're saying that this season, obviously, is coming to an end in terms of the crops. What is there left, to be bought? It's very little, isn't it? So for the season 2017-2018, grow as much as you want, and it will be exported. So that policy alone is going to make agriculture much more vibrant. But we also recognize that there are a lot of emergent farmers that are finding it very difficult because of access to long-term funds at an appropriate level of cost. So we're creating this fund to support 1,000 emergent farmers so that they can be able to invest in productivity, in expansion of agriculture. So we are going to make a fundamental difference.
Who are these emergent farmers?
You can be an emerging farmer.
It doesn't matter. You're not now targeting the peasant farmers, the people in the rural areas, no, civil servants, and anybody else can access this fund.
No, what we're doing is very, very clear. Remember, we've been talking about issues around farming blocks and et cetera, We're going to have the private sector investing in farming blocks. We are going to have others that are going to supply into those, farming blocks. But in order for them to do that, they need to be capacitated. I was only 3 weeks or 4 weeks ago, went to see what's happening in, Mpongwe. Zambia has built up one of the best hatcheries. They need a lot of things to be done. The feedstock that goes in there, so soya beans, maize, etc. So there are those emergent farmers in the Pongo area who can actually be able to supply in already an existing market. And what is lacking, what is failing to unlock, is to be helped with funds. So we're saying, let's say these funds. So you already have a market available. We, for example, have Zambia Sugar. They are providing a market for cane growers. Why don't we expand? And those are the type of emergent farmers that we're talking about that already have
a ready market.
A ready market.
So everybody's hoping, Minister, that come next year, when you present, if and when you present the budget for 2018, you will probably read a different script than we've heard before, of realigning FRA, diversifying the economy, putting more money in agriculture, and all those things. I hope they change. But now let me look at one other issue.
When we read
the different script.
Next year, we'll be saying, evaluating our performance. What lessons we have learned? What things can we do to correct going forward? And how much have we been able to boost output in the sector, in agriculture? And that is a script that we must be able to read. We don't want a broken record.
We'll hold you to account to that. But let me look at the one structural issue that you mentioned yesterday about realigning and evaluating state-owned enterprises. And you listed some of them as ZESCO, Zamtel, Zambia National Building Society, Indeni, Tazama Pipeline, Zambia Railways. And it sounds more like an IMF script.
First of all, we said in the budget that this is a homegrown economic recovery program. The decision that we take, we must own. It's homegrown because it's our responsibility to take those decisions. You don't need IMF to come to you to tell you that you can't afford. You don't need IMF to say you can no longer afford to subsidize fuel, to subsidize electricity, because these things we know. It doesn't need IMF to come to me and say, you are not able to make monies in these state-owned enterprises. Why should I continue to subsidize state-owned enterprises? Do I need IMF to tell me that I can't afford to carry on this burden? No, I just need to be realistic that where I can't afford, I need to take alternative
decisions. So are we privatizing some of these companies?
What we have said, very clearly, we are going to hive out those that are a burden.
You're using a different word. Privatizing? Hiving out?
Hiving out.
Which word are we?
No, hiving out means,
means
very simply, you sell it. That's what it is. You sell it. You get a price, you minimize your losses. Very clear. We're not even vague about it. If it doesn't work, if it's a cost on you, sell it off.
I want to pick one company which people have spoken about. Other economists have said, government doesn't need ZISC. Sell it, use the money to invest in agriculture or other economic sectors that are performing and economic.
You know, the issue of ZISC is very, very clear. If you look at the insurance industry right across, and you look at the returns that other private sector companies are making compared to this huge ZISC, then you begin to ask the question, why are we not making money? Is insurance so complicated that government must put themselves in it? Government must not be in the business of doing business. Insurance is a very straightforward, matter. Why don't you get an injection of the private sector in ZISC so that they can begin to make money? Whether it to be partnership, whether it to be joint venture, whether it to be hiving, we have to formulate a solution that minimizes for me to continue to inject money in there.
Is that the same story for Zamtel?
It's
That's doing business. You could probably hive it off as well.
Zamtel is even in a much more difficult, position. Only, not only I'm not getting the taxes from them, I'm not getting dividends. When you invest, you must get a return, isn't it? So, if I'm not getting any money, Zambian people are not getting the dividends, and they're not even getting the taxes, and they have to offer guarantees for their investment, then clearly that business model is not sustainable.
It's not working for you.
Yeah, it's not working.
Minister, we don't seem to have much time, but the budget is a big document.
Yes, we need
the whole day analyzing it. But I want you to look at the issues that the taxes that have come into the 2017 budget. Some of them, particularly, like I said, the middle class has really complained that you've probably given on the right hand, taken grabbed from the left hand. Let's look at pay as you earn, 3,300 threshold. But again, you've raised on the other band, you've raised it to 7.5%. Taxing the same people. They are the same people who are affected by the electricity, the fuel, and increase in spare parts. And you are demolishing the middle class. You don't love it so much.
You can't Grevazio grow an economy without a strong, middle class. That's critically important. But you also can't give what you don't have. So if I remove subsidies and it affects not only the middle class, it affects everybody else, there must be a readjustment. On pay as you earn, who could have done a lot bit more? On one hand, you are saying you are being conservative, you are not growing the economy beyond 5%, you are only doing it at 3%. Where does that growth come? It's made from domestic tax revenue mobilization. So even by doing those little things in pay as you earn, I'm still not able to get to 5%. You understand?
You're diminishing the spending power among the middle class.
No, I'm saying that we need to create revenue so that we invest in infrastructure that is going to create competitiveness of this country. That's why we're saying if we are able to do quickly the Solwezi Chingora Road, then we increase the capacity to generate from there. If we do the Kitwe Chingora Road, we increase the revenue making capacity. So create a platform that raises the revenue potential. Then you can begin to say, okay, now what do we do with the tax? It will begin to come down because the revenue earning capacity would have been boosted. So for now, we have all of us to carry some level of burden. Unfortunately, there's no other option. There's no other option at the moment. That is the only way we're going to move forward.
Electricity tariffs, cost reflective, 100%, 300% increase?
What we have done is that we have a study that is being conducted to determine at what level is this cost reflectivity going to be achieved. Because some of it may be we are carrying inefficiencies and a lot of, things that must not be passed on to the final consumer. So we said, instead of using guesswork, let's have a properly researched and verifiable system. So a tariff study, and we're hoping the early part of next year, there will be a document which says for each category of customer, the cost of tariff is X. And that has been researched, taking into account all the variables that terminate into a number. So that We know that this is a number, and then we say, how can we get to that number? We have already said in the budget that it will be done in a phased manner. So if the number is determined, we'll say every 3 months or every 6 months or every 1 year, we're going to increase the tariff so that we migrate to a cost-reflective tariff on the basis of a researched number, not guesswork.
Spare parts, I'll get back to that again. The increase is huge, 5 to 15%.
For your car?
You really need the money, and you really have to squeeze it out of anybody else.
We need the money. We need the money.
You've put the budget on the table, and maybe one last question I should ask: why should people smile? What do you pick out as one of the biggest things in the budget that should make people happy, and they should look forward to its execution?
What I pick out that people should look at is that it's not about happiness or sadness. It's about getting Zambia to a level where they recover in terms of the economy. To get Zambia to a level where we minimize wastage and really focus expenditure on those areas where we can begin to get a return. To get the right level of discipline, particularly in government, to minimize expenditure. To bring in a legal framework, which was spoken about, where abusers of government resource are immediately punished. If we begin to get that level of togetherness as a country, then we begin to grow the economy, because it's about minimization of wastage, misallocation, misappropriation. That is what we need to address. It's not about being happy or sad. We need to do the correct things.
And grow the economy.
And
Minister,
grow the economy.
It's been a pleasure having you on the program.
Thank you.
Well, you've been watching Sunday Interview, and my guest this evening was the Minister of Finance, Mr. Felix Mutati, who was explaining the issues contained in the 2017 budget. Well, it's been a marathon and a lot of issues to cover, but I must announce that join Mr. Mutati again tomorrow with Frank Mtuvila as he looks at further issues in the budget. I'll be back next week at the same time. Pleasant viewing.